What's up? Here's my update video for today. So, per my schedule, today I was just looking over some old notes, and I really haven't had many new notes since the Base64 project. I was mainly looking into initially Base64, then later on ASCII and UTF-8, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of those now because when I reviewed the notes, it was pretty straightforward. It was a lot of stuff that has already been kind of hammered into my brain on account of working on the project. But I looked over some of my other notes on things like secure shell, network ports, file buffers, environment files, and just character encoding standards in general. And looking through these notes, I realized that a lot of this stuff is pretty disjoint. It's not really separated. And what I would like to do is probably have the notes that I'm taking be tied to and motivated by a project. So I think having a well-defined and scoped out project like the Base64 project made it very easy for me to know what it was I wanted to learn, because it was very apparent that, hey, if I want to understand this, that, or the other, I need to understand these other topics first. And so rather than just looking for topics and selecting them at random, I was learning things because of what I was trying to accomplish with the project. And so I think I might reform the plan that I devised a couple days back so that I'm not spending as much time taking and reviewing notes, and also so that the notes that I am interacting with pertain to what my current project is. So I think rather than having a day fully dedicated to learning something new and taking notes, I will get rid of that day and have it coincide with the project day. So maybe I'm coding, but I might also need to do some research on something in the process of implementing whatever it is that I'm trying to implement in code. And so that way, I have my project, I'm coding it, I'm doing research on stuff that's necessary to accomplish the project, and when I do research on that, I take notes and I can review those notes the next day when I have my review day. And so I think having a 2-day loop is going to be a little bit tighter, and it'll be a little more intentional as well, because the things that I'm learning about will directly tie into the project I'm trying to implement. And I think the fact that the notes that I'm taking and reviewing tie into the project I'm working on makes my learning a bit more directional and less cluttered. I'm not learning about something random on one day and then circling back to a project that's totally unrelated the next day. And so I think I'm going to amend my study routine to that and see how that works, because I think the more time I spend coding and working on projects, the better it's going to be. The more time I can spend working on projects is going to probably give me the not the quickest, but the most efficient amount of results, because when I'm working on a project, my efforts are directed towards something that's well scoped out rather than just randomly saying like, I want to learn about this today. So with that in mind, I was going to mention a couple of the project ideas that I've come up with. Some of these I had on my own, and then others I looked online and got some good ideas from. I also mentioned in a previous video that I might want to do an ML project every once in a while, because I am a machine learning engineer. That is the job that I'm trying to get into. And so ML is a part of CS, so I think I might do a couple of those projects, and it might be a nice chance for me to put out some educational content on something that I'm more well versed in. But the strictly CS projects that I was thinking about were making a program that can read PNGs. So when I was working with reading binary data and bytes and all of that with the Base64 project, that got me thinking about, okay, how is a PNG file actually arranged? Because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of bytes, right? And so there must be some particular schema that is the same for every PNG file that you could just read in the bytes and reconstruct the image, reconstruct, the number of I'm trying to say rows and columns because I'm thinking of it like a matrix, but like the height and the width of the image just by looking through the bytes and the metadata in, I assume it's probably like the first couple bytes are metadata, and then after a certain point, you just get to straight image data. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I think that would be a good project because it would teach me about how PNGs are stored on the byte level and probably would give me some intuition for how other files store data on the byte level as well. And it would get me used to reading a bunch of bytes, parsing them, and reconstructing the object that they're meant to represent. So that's one that I'm excited about, and I think I'll probably do at some point. Another thing I was thinking about was making an HTTP server. And so I was researching this, and it looks like there's various levels of complexity that you could choose to take this project. I want to keep it in Python because I don't really know C, and I certainly don't know anything like assembly, but it seems like I can get a pretty, what's the phrase I want to use? I could still get a pretty hands-on implementation if I choose to restrict it to Python. So I think that would be good because obviously I've worked with endpoints before, I've worked with APIs, and so I know the basics of HTTP requests, but anytime I have any sort of server running on my machine, like if I have like something stood up on localhost with Streamlit or Fast API, those services obfuscate all of the all of the logic that goes into creating an endpoint that can receive data and send data back. Which, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if you have a Fast API server running, that's just a HTTP server that is going out of some port on your computer. I'm probably using the wrong terminology, so if you're someone who's acquainted with this terminology and you know the right way to talk about what I'm trying to talk about, let me know what it is I'm trying to get at in the comments, because I think it's clear what I'm trying to describe, but I don't know the right way. I don't know the right terminology to describe it. Anyway, though, that's another one that I think would be really good because it'll make me have to research the HTTP protocol in more depth, and it'll also get me to interact more closely with the operating system when I'm creating the HTTP server. Another thing that I saw, this one I didn't think of, but I saw online, was a chessbot. That's obviously like a pretty classic project using things like alpha beta pruning and evaluation functions and all of that. But I think it would be good to learn about some of the more optimal methods they use in the chessbot community. So I know that rather than using like a string or array representation of the board, sometimes they will use, oh gosh, what is it? I want to say SVG. There's some sort of like compressed string format that represents the position of all the pieces on the chessboard. I think that would be really instructive to learn. And I think also creating the evaluation function and using methods like alpha beta pruning to restrict the search space, that would be a very good refresher on data structures, because I don't really interact with data structures all that much. I mean, in Python, all you ever use is lists and hash tables in the form of dictionaries. Oh, that's another thing. I meant to write this down. Let me write it down right now. Implement a hash table. I remember learning about this way back in the day when there's the different ways to deal with collisions where there's like linear probing, and then you can also just stack collisions into like a linked list that lives at that index. Anyway, I think that would be another good way to touch up on my data structures and think about how these data structures are actually implemented under the hood. Another project I was thinking of was a JSON parser, which would just get me more acquainted with parsing text, especially from a file rather than text that's already in a program like a string. And there were a couple other ones that I looked at but wasn't that interested in, but that's a pretty good list of things right now. And so I think I'll have a couple weeks scoped out of work if I decide to work on these projects. So I think I'm in a good spot with that. And if you guys have any suggestions for projects, please let me know. I'm always open to ideas, and I want to get a really big breadth of work together. And so that's what I'm kind of aiming for. As far as the machine learning oriented projects, I think I could maybe make a video on how to implement a transformer from scratch in PyTorch. So not using the built-in transformer layer or any of the pre-trained models from Hugging Face. There's a lot of great resources out there on implementing transformers. Umar Jamil, who I think works at Mistral, he's got a very good video, and I followed his video actually the first time that I tried to implement a transformer from scratch. Although with all these videos, there are a couple things where I think they could have done one or two things better, and so maybe I'll try to correct those and release my own video. I don't expect to be able to provide the level of technical depth that somebody that works at Mistral can, but I think maybe because the people that are making these videos are so advanced in the ML space, they neglect to mention certain things that are confusing to people that are more in the beginner territory. And so I might be able to offer something unique in that I'm in a sort of intermediate stage as far as machine learning goes. And so I can bridge the gap between this high level concept of implementing a transformer and people that might not be all the way there yet with the theory and even with the coding. That'd probably be a good starting project because I've written transformers multiple times, so at this point I'm pretty comfortable with it. But yeah, it's obviously I do try to make these projects intentionally, and it would be nice if the machine learning projects that I make were actually things that people were interested in and they thought were needed. So if you guys are interested in seeing an implementation of a transformer, let me know. Or if there are other like machine learning papers that you'd like to see implemented, because I'm just going to implement the transformer from Vaswani's paper in 2017. But it might be worth looking at implementing other papers like the vision encoder paper. I think it's called A Picture's Worth 16 by 16 Words or something like that. It's the original like vision transformer paper. I think that'd be a fun one to implement because I've not done that one before. And also maybe I could touch on some recurrent neural networks. Any of that stuff seems interesting to me, so if that's interesting to you guys, let me know, and we can figure out which one I'll start with. But yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now. I think I'm going to reform my learning regimen to a 2-day split where it's coding and research and then content review. And I'm probably going to get started pretty soon on that HTTP server. I do still have a few things I want to clean up on the Base64 project, but I got the implementation down, which is what I wanted. So when I have some free time, I'll go and implement the test suite and clean up some stuff. But largely, I think I'm going to set that down for now. But yeah, that concludes, what is this, day 5? Day 6? I want to say, yeah, I think it's day 5. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Again, leave a comment on if you have any preference about what project I do next or any suggestions for me. And yeah, have a good one.